Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. This is the channel where I paint my face, turn my camera on and talk about some books. On the day that you are watching this video, it is day 3 of Bookmas and it's officially my first vlog of Bookmas. But obviously I had to start this a little bit in advance because by the time this video is coming out, a full week of Bookmas hasn't actually happened yet. Just a little behind the scenes movie magic there for you. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce what this whole vlog is about. Ben picked out 3 books from my shelves, 3 books that I haven't read, and he wrapped them up for me in this beautiful gingerbread wrapping paper, and I am going to unwrap one of these books at a time, read them, and just vlog the whole experience. I did leave him an instruction, which was to pick small books because this is going to be a week vlog and I do not need to be reading monsters. And he is there's some interesting wrapping skills going on here, but you know what, we're not going to complain, he helped me out. So let's unwrap the first book. So we're going to go with this one, which he has absolutely massacred with the tape, and let's find out what this book is. So, oh my god, he's used so much paper as well. Looks like Ben was watching my October TBR because he picked out Fairy Tales for Millennials, which was one of the books that I was supposed to read in the month of October, but obviously didn't. So this is going to be the first book that I'm reading with you guys. Looks like my update for the first book is going to just come later this evening. This is a super quick book. As what this is about, it's a collection of fairy tales, classic fairy tales that you know and love, but rewritten in a sort of millennial, tongue-in-cheek kind of humor. Sleeping Beauty waking up woke. Goldilocks discovers a darling little porridge pop-up. The Pied Piper shifts his content strategy to attract more followers, and the 3 Little Pigs explaining that realistically, a house of straw is really the only way a first-time buyer can get on the property ladder. I'm gonna get started on this book, and I'm probably not gonna update you until I reach the very end because it is such a quick one. Horrific lighting. It's like, what time is it? 9:30 p.m. I think at the moment, and I've just finished Fairy Tales for Millennials by Bruno Vincent, and yeah, I had a pretty fun time with this book. Like at the very beginning, it was definitely like not taking itself too seriously, having a bit of fun. As I got further into the book, each short story, sorry, my voice just broke there. Each short story or fairy tale began to take itself a bit more seriously, and it became like a social commentary on things like consent and racism, prejudice, police brutality, discrimination, like the dark side of the internet and how toxic like internet algorithms can be, which was interesting, but obviously wasn't what I was expecting going into the story. It did get quite dark towards the end, which yeah, I don't mind. It's just unexpected. Yeah, I gave the book 3.5 stars, had fun reading it, don't have a ton to say about it. There are a few things that I like highlighted in the book, like quotes and things that I thought were really funny. Her phone was hovering around 15% danger zone and she needed to charge it, or it might not see her home. A scenario that would make any law-abiding citizen consider breaking and entering. And that was about Goldilocks and like the reason why she broke into the bear's house. There's one in the Jack and the Beanstalk story, and he says, in her day, that was what you did to survive. She had, over the years, been a scullery maid, a street sweeper, a coal miner, and a prostitute, sometimes all in the course of the same weekend. But Jack insisted on only doing jobs that were part of his quote-unquote journey. So I like that this book, like, it didn't take itself too seriously. It had a bit of fun. But on to the next book. We have 2 interestingly wrapped presents left. I'm gonna go for the hardback. Let's find out what Ben has in store for me with this one. Oh god, no, it's not a hardback. It is Love in the Time of Serial Killers. This is a very recent purchase. It's about a girl named Phoebe Walsh who's obsessed with true crime. It doesn't help that she's low-key convinced that her new neighbor, Sam Dennings, is a serial killer. He may dress business casual by day, but at night he's clearly up to something. It's not long before Phoebe realizes that Sam might be something much scarier, a genuinely nice guy who can pierce her armor to reach her vulnerable heart. So it's like, it's a bit of a romance, I think, but it's sort of with this serial killer undertone. I can't remember who it was, but someone's read this and I don't think they loved it, but I'm hoping that I will enjoy it, that it'll have like a sort of witty, not taking itself too seriously humor to it. But yeah, we'll see. I will get stuck into this. Oh god, is that, oh no, it has deckled edges. Oh, I hate that. But anyway, I will get stuck into this and I will update you guys throughout, so you can hear about my thoughts. I'm checking in with a very, very quick update, which is that I'm about 100 pages into Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson. I am really struggling to talk today. And yeah, you know, it's not bad. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's good either. At the moment, there's just nothing going on. It's a very, very slow beginning to the story, and it's not capturing my attention just yet, but I think finally the sort of pining side of the romance is about to start happening, or it's like starting to kick off, so that is kind of keeping me interested. Outside of that, her obsession with true crime is creepy. I think there's definitely residual trauma from her childhood that's really, really impacting her trust in men. All the serial killers that she focuses on, it hasn't gone past my notice that all of them are men. She hasn't focused on any female serial killers, not that there's many of them. She's writing a dissertation about serial killers. You'd think gender would come into it, considering it is so heavily swayed towards men and not towards women, and maybe that would be an interesting topic to discuss. She's not interested in that at all, so I definitely think that relates a little bit to this sort of unresolved trauma that she has relating to her own dad. She makes these jokes about like suicide and that are really, really uncomfortable and inappropriate, and I'm not sure if that's just because she's not able to understand that that's inappropriate, or if she's just not reading the room, or she's ignorant, or she's just spent too much time on her own. It's weird that she's just making these jokes about really, really uncomfortable and inappropriate topics. I'm also really not loving the over-exaggerated like wokeness in this story. There are moments where I think the author is trying to be inclusive through her characters and the things that they're saying, but it's just coming off as really inauthentic, really staged. And I mean, lastly, all the characters are kind of boring, especially the side characters. Like, there's just nothing going on. It's this girl talking about her dissertation, talking about all these serial killers, and trust me, like, I love true crime, but the way she's talking about it just isn't interesting. The side characters have no depth to them. We're spending all of this time in the main character Phoebe's head, and she's just not an interesting human being. I think it's sitting probably at like a 3-star at the moment because I'm not massively against it. That's where I'm at so far in the book at the moment, and nothing much to report other than that. Very, very boring over in my neck of the woods at the moment, so I am not going to keep you any longer, and I'm just going to get back to reading, and I'll give you my thoughts either at the end of this book if I can finish it, or at the next point in which I say there is also still nothing going on, or hopefully when something finally happens and this book gets a bit interesting. But anyway, that is where I'm at the moment. I'll update you in a minute. Update time. I just finished Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson, and we got ourselves a 2-star read with this one. It was just not amazing. You know a book isn't gonna be a success when you're like 100 pages in and you just hate the main character, like really, really hate them. All of the stuff that she'd gone through in her childhood aside, she just wasn't a good person. Understand her like distrust of men and her suspicion of Sam, and the way that she's just like very much not open to getting into relationships or anything like that. Completely understand all of that. That's not what I was bothered with. It was like the bullying and how badly she would treat him and how much she would mess him around. Rant about her over. I was not a fan of her, but I also wasn't a fan of the guy. I think he was a pushover, and I think him and her family, they allowed her to get away with so much that she shouldn't have been allowed to get away with. Someone should have pulled her in and be like, hey, you're being a bitch. Because at times as well, she would treat the females in her life really horribly. I understand the issues with men, it's related to her own issues with her father. Why are you treating these women like shit as well? They're just trying to help you, they're just trying to support you. She was just really, really mean to everyone. I feel like the book at the very beginning was very, very so slow paced because we spent all of this time inside this character's head just talking about different serial killers and about her completely baseless suspicions that her neighbor was a serial killer, which I'm gonna get on to in a second because that was a whole nother thing entirely. All the other characters in it had no depth, no complexity, nothing. This was her story, and I didn't like that because I didn't like her. But as for the baseless accusations of her neighbor being a serial killer, reading the blurb, like, that is the hook that's supposed to reel you in. The author puts that in there and goes, oh, just you wait. That's a selling tactic, like that's what's gonna make you pick up the book. And maybe I'm being cynical. For me, it felt like it was a very, very underused plot device or an underused element of the story, because it lasted maybe like 50 to 60 pages where she was genuinely suspicious of her neighbor before she started to fall for him, and then all of a sudden, like, his likelihood of being a serial killer went down massively. Have some base to your accusations. He actually does something creepy that you're like, oh my god. Because as well, he didn't actually do anything. She was just like, oh, you're my neighbor and you helped me with something? Must be a serial killer. Have those suspicions, begin to like fall for him, and make it an actual conflict in her head where she's like, this guy's really attractive, but he's also really suspicious. This story didn't really make anything of that plot device, and so I was like, you're telling me it's about love in the time of serial killers, but then you're not giving me anything that you're promising about that whole serial killer plotline. There was just a lot going on in this story, not a lot of which made sense. I will appreciate it for the fact that once the romance kicked off, I did have a bit of fun with the story, and once the romance kicked off, her own sort of insecurities about being with Sam came out, and her own neglect and trauma that she'd experienced as a child and the resulting distrust of men, that definitely played a role in their relationship in a way that made sense. Prior to that, it was just a very slow beginning, very illogical founding on the whole serial killer side of things, and frankly very boring, as we were just constantly in this internal monologue for the main character. So that is my somewhat messed around, disjointed, very ranty review of Love in the Time of a Serial Killer. Now I'm gonna unwrap the final book for this vlog. So, book number 3. I don't think it's a hardback, it's definitely a paperback, and it's not very floppy. And it's, again, wrapped kind of interestingly. Thank you, Ben, for the weird wrapping of this book, but let's open this up and find out what it is. It is, oh, this is not what I expected it to be. It's The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse. As for what it's about, it says, a beautiful eerie hotel in the Swiss Alps, recently converted from an abandoned sanatorium, is the last place Detective Ellen Warner wants to be, but her estranged brother has invited her there for his engagement party, and she feels she has no choice but to accept. Arriving in the midst of a threatening storm, Ellen immediately feels on edge, and things only get worse when they wake the next morning to find her brother's fiancée is missing. With access to the hotel cut off, the guests begin to panic, but this is only the first disappearance. Everyone's in danger and anyone could be next. Isolated mystery. Love the whole family tension side of things with a wedding. There's always a lot of tension around a wedding. I'm gonna get started on this book and hopefully read it very quickly, because like it's a thriller, it's a mystery, those sorts of things, and they tend to be very speedy reads. If I can find an audiobook for this, even better, but I'm not crossing my fingers because I've not had a lot of success with that lately. But anyway, this is what I'm gonna be reading next. Rocking the just got out of the shower, couldn't be stuff to dry my hair look today, and you know what? I'm not mad at it. I'm just going with it because I cannot be stuffed. But anyway, in other news, more exciting news, I am 64% through The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse, and shit is hitting the fan. The avalanche that's promised in the blurb has just struck. Everyone's stuck there. They can't do anything. The detective has officially been given permission from the police in Switzerland, I think they are, in the Swiss Alps, yeah, to investigate the murders that are happening, but obviously there's a bit of conflict there because she doesn't have jurisdiction, so everything that she does has to be approved by the police, and then she's doing things and they're like, we never told you to do that. I think the character, the main character, Ellen, is showing some real development throughout the story that I am loving. She's definitely coming into her own a little bit more, and like the trauma and anxiety and everything that she faced at the beginning of the book is still there, but you can tell that like she loves what she's doing and she is so excited by it, because she's getting hooked in these mysteries. She is going hell for leather, like I am going to figure this shit out before anybody else does. Like I said, the avalanche has struck, so that feeling of isolation is definitely there. The feeling of desperation is there. The anxiety because this killer seems to be watching her. That's definitely coming to pass in this book, and it's definitely boosting the atmosphere of the read. It's also got short chapters, which makes it a very, very speedy read. We also got a few different POVs from people who'd been captured by this killer. That obviously is a very, very interesting element in itself because you're seeing like the psychology of the killer as well as the psychology of the detective. All the kills are being done in this really strange sort of way, which makes me think it's a revenge plot that has something to do with the sanatorium. Like in my mind, my theory at the moment is like the killer had a relative or something that was held in the sanatorium and he or she is reenacting what that person went through. But yeah, it's a really, really creepy read and I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm excited to finally start to see all the threads unravel a bit as we get to the last like 30 to 40% of this book. But yeah, I'm having a really fun time with this. Ben has definitely picked a good one in the last book. Yeah, let's just get back to reading and I will check in with you in a bit once I've actually finished this book. Guys are just gonna have to excuse the really horrific lighting because it's like 5 p.m. right now and I'm in London and it's winter, which means my daylight hours in this season are incredibly limited. So we're just operating off of what my lamp can provide, which is yellowy and shit. So you know what, we're going with it. We're running with it. We're gonna do an update, which is that I finished The Sanatorium, the last book in this vlog by Sarah Pearse, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. I kind of went into it quite skeptically, but this actually, it did well. It held up. As for my thoughts on the book, firstly, Ellen, the main character. I mean, I think she was such an interesting character to follow because the amount of growth and development that she went through in this story, as well as like being this perfect, beautiful, like well-written example of someone who is able to block out and completely rewrite a traumatic event in their past and how that happens and what that means. Her own trauma impacted on the case and, you know, it made her unable to do certain things, unable to help in certain ways. It made her particularly vulnerable in certain ways. It made the whole reading experience very tense and anxious because you felt on the verge of a panic attack constantly because the main character was and you were in her head. But I mean, her brother and her boyfriend, I really don't like those two characters because they would not give her the time of day. Like the amount of convincing that she had to do just to get them to hear her out and take her seriously was really, really horrific. But the killer, again, super fascinating. And I'll come on to this in a bit, but like the symmetry of the past and present events and how that all wrapped around the killer was really cool. As I've said in previous updates, I liked that we got different POVs in this book, but it sort of was something that happened at the beginning and then never happened again towards the end, which I thought was a little bit strange. But outside of that, I think the story flowed well. It was written well. The writing in the dialogue did get a little bit immature at times, which I thought was weird because these people are like, in my mind, like 30 plus. So I thought it was a little weird that sometimes they talked like teenagers. And I think the twists and things could have cut back a little bit because I think I got whiplash by the end of the book. I mean, the one thing I want to say is I thought it was incredibly interesting how the past and the present events was sort of, there was this symmetry between what was happening to these women in the past and in the present. And the reason why I say interesting is because I'm not sure if I love it. It feels a little bit like victim blaming, and I'm not going to give the full details of this whole situation and the story because it's a massive spoiler if I were to give the details of that, but the justification for the killer doing what they were doing feels a bit like people saying, if you have something horrible happen to you, then you're totally gonna end up as a spree killer. But yeah, other than that, it was a pretty good book. I enjoyed my time with it. I won't ever pretend to understand the logic and the actions of the brother and the boyfriend, but all the other characters were really, really interesting. There were a lot of really, really strong female leads in this book that I really appreciated. And yeah, 4 stars. This was a good book. Sorry if I've moved. I just had to go and grab the other books. But overall, we've read 3 books in this vlog. We started with Fairy Tales for Millennials by Bruno Vincent, then Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson, and then finally The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearse. I think I had a pretty good time in this vlog. Ben picked some pretty decent books. Like this was a weird sort of one. I think I gave it like 3 stars or something like that. I can't remember now. And again, this one was definitely really weird. It wasn't something that required a lot of thought and analysis, but it was a bit of fun. And this one was definitely a standout. The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce was definitely the standout of the vlog. So I'm glad that I can now check these 3 books off my TBR, because these were definitely things that I probably wouldn't have gotten to anytime soon. But that is the end of this video. That is the end of the first vlog for Bookmas. I hope you have enjoyed this vlog. I hope you've enjoyed this experience. Come and let me know down below if you've read any of these books, loved them, hated them, if you think there's anything I've missed in any of them. Also, just let me know what you're reading this Christmas, if there's anything you're particularly looking forward to. Are there any sort of Christmassy books? I know there are a few on my TBR that I'm going to be getting to very, very soon, so you guys should be seeing some content on that soon. But yeah, come and chat to me in the comments down below. I love talking to you guys, and I do my best to reply to every single comment. I really, really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you are enjoying Bookmas so far. And if you are, please do let me know by liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell all down below. It is a super, super easy way to help my channel grow, and now is the best time to get involved in this channel because we are just at the beginning of Bookmas and there is a video every second day. So there's plenty of content to get you through the Christmas month, and I cannot wait to see you very, very soon in my next video in 2 days' time. Bye!